A man was driving down a busy boulevard when the light ahead turned yellow. He did the responsible thing and stopped, even though he could have gunned it and made it through. The woman tailgating him wasn't impressed. She slammed on her brakes, laid on the horn, and started screaming in frustration, flinging her phone and makeup across the car in the process. In the middle of her meltdown, there was a tap on her window. She looked up to see a serious-looking police officer motioning for her to get out of the car. Confused, she complied and soon found herself at the police station, searched, fingerprinted, photographed, and placed in a holding cell. A couple of hours later, the officer returned and opened the cell. "I'm so sorry for the mistake," he said. "I pulled up behind you while you were honking, swearing, and flipping off the guy in front, but with the 'What would Jesus do' bumper sticker, the Choose Life license plate holder, the 'Follow Me to Sunday School' decal, and that shiny Christian fish emblem, I naturally assumed you'd stolen the car." A small startup throws a costume party to celebrate the end of their first fiscal year. The theme, past and present, honoring what they've accomplished while looking ahead. Employees are encouraged to bring family, kids included, and there's even a prize for the most creative costume. The party kicks off, and the CEO, Catherine, mingles with the crowd. She spots an employee in a full cat costume, complete with wrinkles and gray-streaked fur. Curious, Catherine asks, "And who might you be?" The employee grins. "I'm you, in the future. Old cat?" Catherine bursts out laughing, appreciating the clever pun. Just then, the employee's young daughter appears, also dressed as a cat, but youthful and unwrinkled. Catherine smiles. "And who are you supposed to be?" The girl beams. "I'm your future." Catherine tilts her head, puzzled. The girl giggles. "Because you've gotta be kidding me." In King Solomon's court, 2 men and a woman stood before the wise king. "This woman is my wife," declared the first man. "We've been married for 30 years. "No, I'm her husband," argued the second man. "We've been married 30 years, but he stole her from me." Solomon paused, then turned to his servant. "Bring me a saw and her makeup box." The crowd gasped as the servant returned with the items. Solomon lifted the saw and said, "I shall cut the makeup box in half. Each of you will get a piece to do with as you wish." The first man shrugged. "Fine by me." But the second man cried out, "No, don't take it from her. Let him have it. I can't bear to see her without her makeup." Solomon nodded wisely. "Give the woman to the first man. He is her true husband." His servant leaned in and whispered, "How did you know?" Solomon smiled. Simple, both claimed to be married to her for 30 years, but only the real husband would care less about her makeup. An old man lived by a beautiful forest. As the years passed, he began losing his hair, strand by strand, until one day on his deathbed, he was completely bald. He gathered his children around and said, "Look at me. My hair was once thick and full, but now it's all gone. It couldn't be saved. But look outside. See that forest? It's lush and full of life now. But one day the trees will be cut down or die, and it'll be as bare as my head." He paused, then continued, "I want you to promise me something. Every time a tree falls, plant a new one in my memory. Teach your children to do the same. Let it be our family's duty to keep this forest alive." His children agreed, and so the tradition began. Generation after generation, they replanted every lost tree. Centuries passed, but the forest remained as vibrant as ever, all thanks to one man and his receding airline. A stunning young redhead on a flight from Ireland turned to the priest seated next to her. "Father, may I ask you a favor?" "Of course, my child. How can I help?" he replied kindly. "I bought my mother an expensive hair dryer for her birthday. It's unopened, but it exceeds the customs limit. I'm worried they'll confiscate it. Would you mind carrying it through for me? Maybe hide it under your robes?" The priest hesitated. "I'd love to help, dear, but I must warn you I won't lie." "With a face as honest as yours, Father, no one will question you," she said with a wink. At customs, the priest went first. The officer asked, "Father, do you have anything to declare?" The priest smiled gently. "From the top of my head to my waist, I have nothing to declare." The officer, puzzled, asked, "And from your waist to the floor?" The priest replied, "I carry a marvelous instrument, designed for use on a woman, but it's never been used." The customs officer burst into laughter. "Move along, Father. Next!" At a busy bus stop, A young woman stood wearing a skin-tight miniskirt. When the bus arrived, she stepped forward but quickly realized her skirt was so tight she couldn't lift her foot high enough to reach the first step. Thinking fast, she reached behind and unzipped her skirt a little, hoping for some slack. Still no luck. Embarrassed but determined, she reached back again and unzipped it a bit more. Still nothing. Frustrated, she reached back one last time and unzipped her skirt all the way, but even then she couldn't get her foot onto the step. Seeing her struggle, a man standing behind her gently grabbed her by the waist and lifted her onto the bus. The woman spun around, furious. "How dare you touch me like that? I don't even know you." The man, equally shocked, replied, "Well, ma'am, after you unzipped my fly 3 times, I kind of thought we were friends." In medieval times, a king went hunting in Africa. He returned triumphant, having slain a lion, an elephant, and a hippopotamus. As rewards, he gifted the animals' skins to his 3 loyal squires. They became known as the lion squire, the elephant squire, and the hippo squire. Over the years, the lion squire and the elephant squire grew jealous of the hippo squire. They both wanted the prized hippo skin. So they devised a plan to assassinate him and split the hide. The lion squire had 8 sons, and the elephant squire had 18 strong young men in total. They sent their sons to confront the hippo squire, believing sheer numbers would ensure victory. But the hippo squire, though alone, drew his sword and valiantly defeated all 18 attackers. And so, it was mathematically proven that the squire of the hippopotamus is equal to the sum of the squires of the other 2 hides. Mr. Pot was an ordinary man with an extraordinary skin condition. One day he visited his doctor. "Doctor," he said, "I have this strange problem. Multiple times a day my skin suddenly puffs up and turns red, almost like it's boiling. It happens without warning." The doctor was intrigued. "That's unusual. Let's wait here and see if it happens." So they waited and waited. "Was that it?" the doctor asked, leaning in. "Nope, just a trick of the light." Hours passed, but nothing happened. Eventually, the office closed, and Mr. Pot left. But as soon as he got into his car, his skin flared up, red, puffy, just like he'd described. He called the doctor the next morning. "It happened again, right when I got in my car." "Come back in," said the doctor. Day after day, Mr. Pot returned to the doctor's office, sitting patiently, but his skin never acted up, not once. This went on for weeks, months even. The doctor eventually gave up, shaking his head. "I just don't get it. Why does it only happen when you leave?" And so the mystery was never solved. Because as everyone knows, a watched pot never boils. Lee was an elf, but unlike others with their trademark greenish skin, hers had a distinct blue tint. She often boasted, "My mother is an elvish queen." But whispers floated through the palace halls. Her mother's husband, the elf lord, was green-skinned like the rest. Lee's unusual coloring sparked rumors, tales of a youthful affair, a secret hidden in the queen's past. One evening, as Lee passed her mother's chamber, she heard soft weeping. Curious, she crept closer and pressed her ear to the door. "You have to tell her," her aunt urged. "She's old enough to know about where he came from." Pandora? Pandora? Another world? Lee's mind swirled with questions as she tiptoed away, her heart racing. The next morning, a commotion jolted her awake. Shouts echoed through the palace. Grabbing her sword, Lee rushed downstairs but stopped short on the landing, unseen. The palace doors had been thrown open. Her mother, the queen, and her aunt stood aside, faces pale with shock. In the doorway stood a towering figure, at least 9 feet tall, lean, muscular, and blue as the lagoon by the palace. The captain of the guard staggered forward. "Who? What are you?" The blue giant's golden eyes softened as he answered. "I'm Fei Lee's Navi dad." 3 light-skinned gentlemen walked into a tanning salon, eager to get some color. The salon owner greeted them warmly. "Welcome! What kind of tans are you gentlemen after today?" The first man replied, "I'd like a light tan." The owner nodded and led him to a caramel-colored tanning bed. The second man said, "I'm going for a golden tan." He was taken to a dark gold-colored bed. The third man declared, "I want the deepest tan you've got." The owner smiled and showed him to a rich chocolate-colored bed. One by one, the men finished their sessions. The first man emerged after an hour, now caramel-toned and satisfied. The second came out after 3 hours, glowing with a golden tan. The third man spent 5 full hours and stepped out with a deep chocolate hue. All three admired their new looks and headed to the counter to pay. But instead of taking their money, the salon owner handed them forms. "You'll need to sign these first." "Why do we need to sign paperwork?" one asked, puzzled. The owner grinned. "It's just how we do things here. You know, a sign covering the cost will always get you a tan, gents." A German, a Frenchman, and an Englishman went out fishing together. They were enjoying their day when suddenly the German hooked a massive golden fish. As he pulled it off the hook, the fish began to speak. "Please, kind sir, spare my life and I will grant each of you one wish." The German, amazed but not one to pass up such an offer, gently tossed the fish back into the water. "All right. For my wish, I'd like a mug of beer that never empties." Instantly, a frothy mug of ice-cold German ale appeared in his hand. He took a deep swig, and when he looked inside, the mug was still full. "Wunderbar!" he exclaimed, grinning. The Frenchman thought for a moment. "I wish for a great wall to be built around France, 10 miles high, 10 miles thick, so that no one can get in and no one can get out." The golden fish closed its eyes, concentrating. "It is done." Then it turned to the Englishman. "And what would you like?" The Englishman rubbed his chin thoughtfully and asked, "So, there's a wall around France now?" "Yes," replied the fish. 10 miles high and 10 miles thick?" "Yes." "And nothing can get in or out?" "Exactly." The Englishman grinned. "Right then, fill it with water." Steve and his buddies were hanging out, planning their upcoming fishing trip, when Steve broke the bad news. "Sorry, lads, I can't make it this time. The missus won't let me go." After plenty of teasing and ribbing, Steve left frustrated. The next weekend, the guys arrived at the lake to set up camp, only to find Steve already there. He was kicked back in a chair, beer in hand, fishing rod propped up, with his swag rolled out, and a campfire crackling. "Steve, how the hell did you convince your wife to let you come?" Steve took a swig of his beer and grinned. "Didn't have to." He leaned in. "Yesterday I got home from work, grabbed a beer, and sat down sulking because I couldn't come. Then, out of nowhere, the missus snuck up behind me, covered my eyes, and whispered, 'Surprise.' When I moved her hands, there she was, wearing this see-through negligee. She smiled and said, 'Carry me to the bedroom, tie me to the bed, and you can do whatever you want.'" He took another sip of beer and spread his arms wide. "So, here I am. A blonde decided to try ice fishing. She bought all the gear, rod, bait, stool, even a fancy thermos, and headed to a local spot. She found a nice spot on the ice, sat down, and started cutting a hole like she'd seen online. Suddenly, a booming voice echoed around her, "There are no fish under the ice!" Startled, she looked around but saw no one. Shaking it off, she moved farther down the ice, set up again, and began cutting another hole. "There are no fish under the ice!" Now she was freaked out. She grabbed her stuff, went to the far end of the ice, and started cutting yet another hole. "There are no fish under the ice!" Terrified, she dropped her tools and shouted to the sky, "Is that you, Lord?" The voice replied, "No, this is the manager of the ice skating rink. There are no fish under the ice." The only cow in a small Polish town stopped giving milk. The townsfolk did some research and found they could buy a new cow from Moscow for 2,000 rubles, or one from Minsk for 1,000 rubles. Being frugal, they chose the cow from Minsk. To their delight, the cow produced plenty of milk, more than they'd ever hoped for. Wanting to ensure a steady milk supply forever, they bought a bull to breed with the cow. But no matter what the bull did, the cow refused him. If he approached from behind, she moved forward. From the front, she backed away. From the side, she sidestepped out of reach. No luck. Frustrated, the townsfolk went to their wise rabbi for advice. After hearing their story, the rabbi paused and asked, "Did you buy this cow from Minsk?" The villagers were stunned. "Yes, how did you know?" The rabbi sighed deeply. "Because my wife is from Minsk." A recently widowed Jewish woman was sitting on a beach towel at Cocoa Beach, Florida, enjoying the ocean breeze. She noticed a distinguished-looking man around her age settling down nearby with a book. Smiling, she decided to start a conversation. "Hello, sir. How are you today?" "Fine, thank you," he replied, barely glancing up before returning to his book. "I just love the beach," she continued. "Do you come here often?" "Not really," he said. "First time since my wife passed away last year." "I'm sorry to hear that," she said sincerely. "Do you live around here?" "Yeah, over in Suntree," he responded, eyes still on the pages. Determined to spark his interest, she thought for a moment and then asked, "Do you like pussycats?" Without hesitation, the man threw his book aside, leaped onto her towel, and gave her the most passionate ride of her life. As they lay there catching their breath, Sarah gasped, "Oh my, how did you know that's exactly what I wanted?" The man grinned and replied, "How did you know my name was Katz?" It was a dark and stormy night, and the stranger was soaked to the bone as he stumbled upon a remote monastery deep in the woods. Desperate for shelter, he knocked on the old wooden door. No answer. He knocked again, harder this time. Still silence. Frustrated, he noticed a rusty bell pull and gave it a firm tug. Moments later, he heard the slow shuffle of feet and the heavy door creaked open. An elderly monk peered out, his face wrinkled with age and wisdom. "Who knocks on such a night?" the monk asked. "Just a traveler, lost and soaked to the skin," replied the stranger. "Then come in at once! No man should be left to the mercy of this storm," the monk said, opening the door wide. "I am Friar Tuck. You are welcome to spend the night." The friar led him through dimly lit stone corridors to a small, simple room. "Rest here. I'll return in half an hour to take you to dinner." The stranger changed into the dry clothes laid out for him and warmed up by the small fire. True to his word, Friar Tuck returned and guided him to the refectory, where monks were gathering for their evening meal. The stranger was seated between Friar Tuck and the head abbot. The meal was hearty, and the warmth of the monastery brought life back to the traveler. As they finished, the head abbot stood and declared, "Now, brothers, let us enjoy our evening entertainment." The stranger looked around, curious. What kind of entertainment could monks have? Brother Martin stood up and called out, "24!" The room erupted in laughter. Monks chuckling, slapping the table, some wiping tears from their eyes. Next, Brother Michael stood and shouted, 42! Even more laughter filled the hall. Then Brother Madison stood tall and boomed, 96! The monks howled with laughter, some nearly falling off their benches. The stranger, bewildered, leaned over to Friar Tuck and whispered, "I don't understand. They're just shouting numbers." Friar Tuck chuckled. "We've lived together so long that we've numbered all the jokes. Instead of telling the whole story, we just call out the number and everyone remembers it." The stranger, intrigued, thought he'd give it a try. He stood up, cleared his throat, and confidently shouted, 69! The room exploded with laughter, louder than ever. Monks were rolling on the floor, gasping for air, tears streaming down their faces. It was pure chaos. Stunned, the stranger sat down. What was so funny about that one?" he asked Friar Tuck. The friar wiped his eyes, still chuckling. "Oh, that. They've never heard that one before." In a convent in Ireland, the 98-year-old Mother Superior lay on her deathbed. The nuns gathered around, doing their best to make her final moments comfortable. They offered her some warm milk, but she gently refused. One of the younger nuns took the glass back to the kitchen, then remembered a bottle of fine Irish whiskey they'd been gifted the previous Christmas. She poured a generous splash into the milk and brought it back to Mother Superior. This time, the frail nun took a sip, then another, and soon finished the entire glass. Her cheeks flushed, and her eyes brightened with new life. The nuns, sensing this was the perfect moment, leaned in and asked, "Mother, please share with us your wisdom before you go." The Mother Superior slowly sat up, raised a trembling hand, and with a twinkle in her eye whispered, "Don't sell that cow." A rancher and his family owned a single milk cow, their only source of income. The cow produced the sweetest, richest milk in the county. One morning, the rancher woke up to find the cow dead. Devastated and unable to face life without it, he hung himself in the barn beside the lifeless cow. Later that morning, his wife went looking for him. When she saw the dead cow and her husband hanging beside it, grief overwhelmed her. She walked to the nearby river and drowned herself. Their eldest son woke up, found the cow, his father, and his mother dead. As he sat there in shock, a stunningly beautiful woman appeared before him. She smiled and said, "I can bring your family and the cow back to life, but only if you can make love to me 10 times in a row. Fail, and I'll take your life too." The eldest son, eager to save his family, agreed. But after just a few rounds, he collapsed, exhausted. The woman sighed, and with a snap of her fingers, ended his life. The second eldest son woke up next, only to find the same heartbreaking scene and the same beautiful woman. She made the same offer. Desperate, he agreed. But like his brother, he failed before reaching 10 and met the same fate. Finally, the youngest son woke up and found his entire family and the cow dead. The mysterious woman appeared again, repeating her offer. He listened carefully, then asked, "So if I make love to you 10 times, you'll bring back my family and the cow?" She smiled. "Exactly." "What if I do it 15 times?" he asked. "Well," she replied, "I'll bring them back and turn your little ranch into a grand estate." He nodded thoughtfully. "And 20 times?" Her eyes sparkled. "Then I'll give you so much gold, jewels, and riches that your family will live in luxury forever." The youngest son paused for a moment, then asked, "Okay, but one thing, how do I know you won't die like the milk cow did?" One day, a young man, feeling lost and directionless, was wandering through a park. He noticed an old, well-dressed gentleman sitting on a bench, feeding the birds and enjoying the sunshine. The young man hesitated, but finally approached him. "Sir," he said, "you look like you've done really well in life. Do you mind telling me how you made your fortune?" The old man smiled warmly. "Of course, son. Have a seat." The young man sat down eagerly, ready for wisdom. "Well," the old man began, "when I was about your age, I didn't have a penny to my name, but one day, while walking through a park just like this one, I spotted a nickel on the ground. I picked it up, bought an apple, and spent the whole day polishing that apple until it shone. The next morning, I sold it for 10 cents. "Wow," the young man said, leaning in. "With that 10 cents, I bought 2 apples, polished them all day, and sold them the next morning for 20 cents. The young man's eyes widened. "Incredible! Then what happened?" The old man leaned back and grinned. "The day after that, I bought 3 apples. I polished them for hours, and the next day my rich uncle died and left me $1 million. Upon arriving home, a husband was met at the door by his sobbing wife. Through her tears, she managed to say, "It's the pharmacist. He insulted me terribly over the phone this morning." Enraged, the husband grabbed his keys and drove straight to the pharmacy. Bursting through the door, he marched up to the pharmacist. "I demand you apologize to my wife right now," he shouted. The pharmacist held up his hands. "Please, sir, just hear me out before you get any angrier." He took a deep breath and began. "This morning, my alarm didn't go off, so I woke up late. I skipped breakfast and rushed out, only to realize I'd locked both my house and car keys inside. I had to break a window to get them. Then, driving too fast, I got pulled over and handed a speeding ticket. A few blocks from the store, I got a flat tire. When I finally arrived, there was a line of customers waiting, and the phone was ringing nonstop. While trying to serve everyone, I needed change, so I broke a roll of nickels against the cash drawer. They spilled everywhere. I got on my hands and knees to pick them up, and when I stood up, I cracked my head on the open drawer, stumbled backward into a display case, and shattered several bottles of expensive perfume. And through all this, the phone just kept ringing." The husband crossed his arms, still fuming. "And then what?" the pharmacist sighed. "Then I finally answered the phone, and it was your wife. She wanted to know how to use a rectal thermometer." "So what did you say?" "I told her, just stick it in." A man hails a cab and hops in. As they pull away, the cabbie says, "Perfect timing, mate. You're just like Frank." "Frank? Who's Frank?" the passenger asks. "Frank Feldman," the cabbie replies. "Now he was the perfect guy. Did everything right, always. Come on, nobody's perfect. Oh, Frank was a top athlete. Could have gone pro in tennis or golf. Sang like an opera star, danced like a Broadway lead, and played piano like a maestro. Wow, that's impressive. That's not all. He had a mind like a computer, remembered every birthday, every anniversary. He was a gourmet chef, a wine expert, and knew exactly which fork to use for every course. Fixed anything around the house, unlike me. I change a light bulb and the street goes dark. The passenger chuckles. Sounds like quite the guy. Oh, he was. Knew every shortcut, never hit traffic. Always dressed sharp, immaculate suits, shoes polished like mirrors, and the way he treated women, like queens. Never argued, always listened. The perfect husband. So, how did you know Frank? The cabbie sighs. I never met him. He died, and I married his wife. Bill was hitchhiking late at night on a dark, stormy road. The rain was coming down in sheets, and the wind howled so fiercely he could barely see a few feet ahead. Hours passed, and not a single car went by. Soaked and desperate, Bill was about to give up when, through the pouring rain, he saw headlights cutting through the darkness. A car slowly crept toward him and stopped. Without thinking, Bill opened the back door and climbed in, slamming it shut behind him. It was only then that he noticed something chilling. There was no one in the driver's seat. The engine wasn't even running. Before he could react, the car started moving forward. Bill froze in terror as the ghostly vehicle rolled silently down the road. Up ahead, he noticed a sharp curve. Gripping the seat, he braced for impact. But just before the bend, a pale, ghostly hand appeared through the driver's side window and turned the wheel, guiding the car safely around the corner. Bill's heart pounded in his chest. Every time the road curved, the ghostly hand returned, steering the car. Finally, in the distance, he spotted the warm, glowing lights of a pub. Summoning every ounce of courage, Bill flung open the car door, jumped out, and ran full speed into the bar. Dripping wet and gasping for air, he shouted, "You won't believe what just happened!" He ordered 2 shots of scotch, downed them both, and told the stunned patrons about the ghostly car and the mysterious hand. The pub fell into a hushed silence. No one spoke, no one laughed. They could see the sheer terror in Bill's eyes. This wasn't a drunken story. About 10 minutes later, the door burst open. 2 soaked men stumbled in, out of breath and exhausted. One looked around, spotted Bill at the bar, and nudged his friend. "Hey, Bruce, there's the idiot who jumped in the car while we were pushing it." A foreigner arrives in a new country and hops into a taxi heading to his hotel. As they drive through the city, he spots a tall building and asks the driver, "How long did it take to build that?" The driver responds proudly, "That one, about 2 years." The foreigner scoffs. 2 years? In my country, it would have taken only 2 months. The driver grits his teeth, but says nothing. A few minutes later, they pass an even taller building. The foreigner points again. "And that one?" The driver replies, 3 years? The foreigner chuckles. 3 years? Back home, we'd finish it in 1. The driver's patience starts wearing thin. Then they approach the city's tallest skyscraper, its spire scraping the clouds. The foreigner asks smugly, "How long did that one take?" The driver, feeling the need to defend his country, blurts out, 1 month. The foreigner laughs out loud, 1 month? We'd build that in just 2 weeks. The driver slams the brakes as they pass the country's most famous and towering landmark. The foreigner, eyes wide, asks, "And what about that one?" The driver sighs deeply, then mutters, "Honestly, I don't know. When I drove to the airport this morning, it wasn't there." Dear Redditors, I really need your advice on what could be a life-changing decision. I've suspected for a while now that my wife's been cheating on me. The usual signs, her phone rings, but if I answer, the caller hangs up. She's been going out with the girls more often. But when I ask who, she just says, "Oh, some friends from work. You don't know them." Lately, I've been staying up late, waiting for her to come home. I'll hear a car stop around the corner, but she always walks the rest of the way up the drive. Why not get dropped off right at the house? One time, I casually picked up her phone to check the time, and she absolutely lost it, snatched it from my hand, and screamed about me invading her privacy. I've never confronted her. Maybe I just didn't want to face the truth. But last night, she went out again, and I decided enough was enough. I parked my Harley-Davidson lowrider next to the garage and crouched behind it so I could get a clear view of the street around the corner. That's when I noticed it. A small amount of motor oil leaking from the gasket between the rear head and the rocker arm cover. So, should I try fixing that myself? Or just take it back to the dealer?